All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're going to build a secure digital tunnel, literally brick by brick, so you can see exactly how IPsec works under the hood to keep your data safe. So, here's our game plan. We'll start with the foundational databases. Then we'll get into the protocol that does the building, called IKE. We'll zoom in on the actual handshake process, and then, the fun part, we'll see how it holds up under attack and how to reinforce it. Let's jump right in. Okay, so first things first. Every secure connection needs two things, a rulebook and a list of who's actually following the rules. And in IPsec, this is all managed by two really important databases. They're the brains of the operation, deciding what gets protected and how. So let's break this down. You've got the SPD, the Security Policy Database. Think of this as the rulebook. An admin sets it up and says, hey, any traffic from this IP to that IP, it must be encrypted. It's static. It defines the if. On the flip side, you have the SAD, the Security Association Database. This is the active connections list. It's dynamic and it's built automatically. It says, okay, we have a tunnel running right now, and here's how it's encrypted. Here's the keys, here are the algorithms. So SPD is the plan, SAD is the reality. And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If the SAD is the dynamic list of active connections, who or what is actually creating them? The rulebook doesn't build the tunnel itself. So that brings us to the actual construction crew. And that construction foreman is a protocol called the Internet Key Exchange, or IKE for short. This is the thing that actually builds the tunnels. Now, you've got two flavors of IKE. There's IKE v1, the original, and honestly, it was kind of a mess. Super complex, not very efficient, and getting it to work between gear from the different companies was a nightmare. So yeah, it's pretty much obsolete now. The modern standard, the one you'll see everywhere, is IKE v2. It's just better, way more efficient, flexible, and robust. And you can really see why IKE v2 took over. It's just built for the world we live in now. I mean, look at this. It supports mobility, so if you switch from your Wi-Fi to your phone's data, your secure connection doesn't just die. That's huge. It's got built-in NAT traversal, which is a fancy way of saying it works through your home router without any fuss. It's got multiple ways to prove who you are, from simple shared passwords to high-security certificates. And it handles rekeying, which is just renewing the connection with fresh keys to keep things secure. It's a real workhorse. Okay, so we know IKE v2 is the builder, but how does it actually build the tunnel? What's the step-by-step process? Well, it's surprisingly simple and elegant. It all comes down to a quick 4-message exchange. So here it is. It's basically a two-step dance. Step 1, the IK_SciInit phase, is all about agreeing on the tools. You know, what encryption are we going to use? Then, step 2, the IK_auth phase, is where they prove who they are and actually set up the tunnel. Simple as that. A request and response for each phase. So let's dig into that first step, IK_SA_init. This is the negotiation. The two devices are essentially saying to each other, here's the crypto I know how to do, what about you? They find the strongest algorithms they both support, but the really cool part is the Diffie-Hellman exchange. This is some seriously clever math that lets them create a shared secret key right out in the open, over an insecure connection without an eavesdropper being able to figure it out. And that secret key is what they'll use to protect the next part of the handshake. Okay, so now they've got this temporary, secure channel thanks to that Diffie-Hellman key. That's when IK_auth kicks in. Now that they can talk privately, they can prove who they are. This is where they use that pre-shared key, the password, or a more advanced digital certificate. Once they're sure they're talking to the right machine, they finalize the details for the actual data tunnel, the one our real traffic will go through. So we've built this beautiful, secure tunnel. It seems perfect. But, of course, anything that's built can be attacked. So let's put on our black hats for a minute and see how we could try to tear this thing down. Let's stress test the tunnel. This first one is a classic, and it's a huge reason why we don't use IKE v1 anymore. With a specific mode in IKE v1, an attacker could just sniff the connection setup. They'd record the whole thing. Then they could take that recording back to their own machine, offline, and just hammer away at it. They'd throw a dictionary of common passwords at it, running billions of guesses until, pop, they've got your pre-shared key. Game over. Okay, this next one is way more subtle. The Bleachenbacher attack isn't about brute forcing a password. It's a clever cryptographic attack against how RSA encryption is sometimes used. Basically, an attacker sends slightly broken messages and carefully watches the types of error messages that come back. It's like a game of hot or cold, and those errors slowly leak just enough information for the attacker to eventually fake an authentication. It really just goes to show you gotta use modern, patched, and properly implemented crypto. No cutting corners. And then there's the brute force approach. Not to break the encryption, but to break the server itself. Remember that IKEY SA initiate request and that expensive Diffie-Hellman calculation the server has to do? Well, what if an attacker just sends thousands, millions of those initial requests? The server tries to be helpful, so it starts working on every single one, its CPU goes to 100%, its memory fills up with all these half-open connections, and pretty soon it just falls over. Legitimate users can't get in. That's a classic denial of service attack. So that sounds pretty bad, right? Especially that DOS attack. But don't worry, the people who designed IKV2 were smart. They saw this coming, and they built in some really clever ways to reinforce the tunnel and defend against these kinds of attacks. And this is where it gets really cool. To fight that DOS attack, IKV2 has something called a stateless cookie. Before the server does any of that heavy math, it sends a little puzzle, a cookie, back to the client. The client has to solve it and send it back. This proves the client is real and actually at the IP address it says it is, not some spoofer. Only then will the server waste any CPU cycles. Combine that with simple things like rate limiting, only allowing a few connection attempts per second from one IP, and it suddenly becomes way, way harder for an attacker to exhaust the server's resources. So when you put it all together, you can see what's going on. IPsec isn't just one thing, it's a whole system. You start with the static rules in the SPD, the policy. Then you have the dynamic agreements in the SAD, the reality. And it's all powered by a robust protocol, IKV2, that not only builds the tunnels, but also knows how to defend them. It's a complete layered blueprint for security. And there you have it, our secure tunnel is built. But it makes you think, right? A perfectly secure tunnel doesn't help much if the computers at either end are compromised. Understanding IPsec is absolutely crucial, but it's just one piece of a much, much bigger cybersecurity puzzle. Thanks for watching.